Hi class, this is JilMac. I'm the instructor for the Community College of Vermont. Students know if there's anything in this video they don't understand, they can give me a call. They can go out to my website and send me an email. And let's get going. Let me bring up the class that we're going to be talking about. We're doing web development. And web development is very different than using the web. We're going to be learning how to develop on the web and not just being users, but being developers. And our textbook is a really important part of this class. It's important because it's a manual and it's learning how to use a software package because you're learning how to use this manual and you're doing really both of them at the same time. So when we're starting to understand the chapters, and we're going to be going over assignment 2, which starts with chapter 3, we really have to not only read the book, but interact with the book. So we're going to go to the link for downloading the files. And on this, it gives us all of the examples in the different chapters. Notice how chapter 2 didn't have any code examples. It was just kind of explaining file management. But let's go to chapter 3 because that's what we're going to be talking about today. So here in chapter 3, it gives us all of the different examples that the textbook has. And if we go to our website, well, if we go to our folder where we've downloaded all of the examples from the textbook and we've unzipped them, and I put them into assignments. So if I look in my assignment 1, I see chapters 3 and 4 of files associated with it, so that we don't have to retype what's in the book, because we're really just gaining kind of insight into what these files do. And that's kind of the first part of it, is before you learn any language, you really have to learn how to read the language before you can write the language. And so when you see in the textbook on page 44 figure A, and page 44 is starting the web page, if I click on it here, this is what that web page looks like. If I go over to my examples, now I put in page 44 so we could kind of have these in order instead of alphabetical. All you're going to see when you unzip it is starting page, but I went through and renamed them. So I'm going to look at this in an editor, and the editor I'm going to look at it is in Notepad++. So this web page, starting a web page, basically has nothing on the page, and you can see that by the code. Here it is, the body has nothing. It's very similar to chapter 1, which had no contents. If you remember that file. So this is just showing you that there's no title and there's no contents. So if there's no title, it's just going to bring up whatever the web page it was at. If we did it and uploaded this to STWeb, you would see stweb.ccv.edu up here in the tab. So let's go to the next one. I'm going to go back and I'm going to look at this in the book. And in the book, this is page 48, title element. So when we click on this, this is going to show you the title. So when we click on the code, we'll open this in Notepad++, we're going to see that, once again, we still have nothing in the body, and that's true, we have nothing in the body, but in the title we've changed it to Antonio. So here we've changed it. So that's the second example. Let's look at our third example. And a lot of times you really don't want to grab the first example from our chapter because it doesn't really have anything. They keep building on each other. So let's go to headings, which is on page 50. So if we turn our textbook to page 50, we can see the code at the same time, or we can go over to our code and we can edit it in Notepad++. Two different ways to look at the code. Sometimes the book doesn't have all of the doc type and header information. It might just contain the body, which is what you see on page under B on page 50. You're just going to see the body of it. And what you see in A is you see the doc type and things like that. So they might break it up when they're describing what it is. Now also, in your book, whatever is in red in the book is H1, H2. So in the book, they have this in red, and that's because they're going to be talking about those lines of code. It's a little bit different than the color coding you see when you're in Notepad++. In Notepad++, what you're going to see in black is what is physically on the page. You know, the title is up in the tab. Hi, so let's look at some other examples from the textbook. Right now we have page 51, Headings User Guide. And from there, we can look at the code itself from headings H1 to H6. And we can see that these H1 tags happen to be in order. Oops, let's open this up. They happen to be displaying in order where we have H1 and H2, H3 all along. An example for what you could do for an after on this is you could change the order of them, or you could change the contents of them. You could add additional headings in between, and you could call that your after. But the important thing, let's look at page 52. Let's look at that one. File, open. And page 52 happened to be named headings, subheadings. Let's look at the code for that. This is what the code looks like inside the body tag. That we could have an H1, which is giraffe escapes from zoo. And then we have this subheading. And then we could have the story content. Now, if you're not really ready for redoing headings 1 through 6 or something, you could just start to add some paragraphs in there also. That could be something that you could do for your before and afters as you get used to what the code does. Let's go down to navigation. So this is the file nav HTML, and let's open that code. There's the nav, and that is on page 56. And as you're looking at the examples out on the website, and you're looking at your kind of information on page 56, and here we're looking at the code for 56, you can kind of see here we're getting into navigation, and our navigation is, the tag is called UL, or unordered list. And each of these lists is one line. This happens to have a dot because it's unordered. If it was ordered, it would give you numbers. And we'll kind of get into that as the weeks go by. And here's the second list item, and that's going to be the La Sangra Famila. And our third list is going to be Park Güell. So you might want to add additional list items. And to do that, we could just give it an opening list tag, and then I could just say JilMac, and I could have a closing list tag. And now if we were to save this as an after and upload it, you would see JilMac. JilMac wouldn't be underlined because I haven't given it any ahref, but I certainly could give it an ahref and have it linked to my JilMac.com website. So that's what we're learning about on page 56 with our navigation. Navigation, if we wanted to look at a deeper look, we could look at this where we have different articles coming up. And on page 60, we are looking at articles, where we have our navigation up at the top. And then if we click on this navigation, it brings us to this header. If we scroll up and we click on this La Sangra Famila, it will bring us to the second. So let's see how we do that. Let me just look at that file name again. Chapter 3 articles. So let's open that one up. File, open. and that's our article. Oops. And we're going to go down here to page 60, our article, and we're going to open that. I want to open it in open with Notepad so I can look at the code. Okay, so here's our article. We have our title, Antonio. There's our title up in the tab. We have our navigation, and we have our unordered list, and our unordered list is right up here. That our unordered list is going and looking for this tag inside where we have the ID of Gandhi. And when you're in your editor and you block this, now if you block the pound, you're not going to see it. That pound just says go to there. If you just highlight the name, you're going to say, down here in H1, not only have we given this Barcelona's architect an H1 tag, but we've also given it an ID. And that ID, when you click on this navigation, is going to go to the same page, but with this ID. And that's why when we come over here and we click on Barcelona Architect, the Barcelona Architect pops up. If we scroll to the top and we went to Park Güell would come to the top as far as our page was. So let me just do that again. If I go to Park Güell, there it is up at the top. If my page was longer, it's only going to go to that spot. So it kind of depends on how big your window is for that. So each of these examples, as we're looking through the textbook website, is going to show you what it does in the code itself, and it's going to give you the name of it. So if you wanted to, and you were kind of looking through your textbook before you got into any of the examples, you might want to go to page 65 and say what page 65 is. The file that is associated with that is the aside file, aside.html. And the next one on page 68 is the aside nested. So that's going to give it a little bit more. Each of these sections here, the aside, is going to show you something, and they all kind of grow on one another. When we go down into the section footer, you have to scroll to the bottom to see the footer. All of a sudden, we now have this copyright. And if we wanted to look at how that footer was created, we could look at the file, and we could open, and we could scroll down to our footer, which is from page 70, and we're going to open that in Notepad++, open, or whatever your editor is. If you're on a Mac, it's a little bit different. And we're going to look at this footer, and really to see the footer, we have to scroll all the way down. I've got something. We have to scroll all the way down to the bottom to see this footer code. And that's why sometimes your examples are not going to show all the code, because we're starting to build on them. We have this programmer's remark, or our comment, which has the tag greater than exclamation point dash dash, and then you close it with you have to close it with a space dash dash greater than, because it needs that space in between there. Then you have your opening footer and your closing footer, and then this is that ampersand copy semicolon is what creates this copyright little figure, this little thing right there. And that's how you put a footer on every page. So as you're going through your textbook, kind of use the website and the website examples to know what's the name of the file and how does it run, how does it work. And next video will be a little bit about Chapter 4. So thank you very much.